Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Let's Get Real. You're listening to Brenda
and Ashley, and as always, we have a brand new episode for you guys. So today we're going to be getting into some deep conversations, but before we do that, let's just do a little catch up. Brenda, what have you been up to during the quarantine?
Not much. Pretty much just keeping myself busy, trying to do a lot of hands-on stuff. I've been moving things around in my room and trying to make more space. If you know me, I have a really small room, so I was always
cluttered.
Yes. So I had to get rid of a lot of stuff. I was looking through stuff and I realized how much stuff I hoarder. I had stuff from high school, college that was just so unnecessary, and yeah, I just had to declutter myself.
It always feels good. I feel like it's also a mental cleanse too. When you declutter, when the space is cleaner, you can think clearer in the space.
Yeah. And you see that there's more room and you just feel fresh and it feels good.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, pretty much just, keeping busy, trying to keep my mind focused on other things so that I'm not so anxious and going crazy.
Oh yeah.
How about you? What's new?
I have not been doing much. I think this week was weird for me because I wasn't working as much as I usually am. So I was binging. Like I told you, I binged End of the Fucking World in a day and a half. I'm watching Naruto, the anime.
I started watching anime.
Yeah,
I actually had I started watching anime actually. I recently got into it. There's one that I'm gonna send to you that you should probably watch. It's actually really good.
Send it. Yeah, I like it because there's always so many episodes. I've been doing that. I'm learning tarot, like I said. I'm watching a lot of YouTube, so much YouTube. It's ridiculous. And yeah, I've just been I've been kind of lazy this week, but I'm not losing my mind yet. I'm bored. I want to leave the house, but I'm not going insane yet.
Yeah, I think, it's important that, you try to stay sane as much as you can. And I think the hardest part right now is people who are living in, cluttered, not cluttered houses, but people who are living with, a lot of people in their house.
Yeah. Oh my
so
God.
I think, for example, me, I have, 5 other people in this house. So it's, it's very stressful if we were all to be here. But, like I said before, the good thing is, they're essential. So I got nothing to worry about.
I went downtown the other day. For the first time since the quarantine. No, it was the second time. But, I saw downtown. Have you seen it yet?
I've seen, little pictures here and there that people post and how, it's ghost town, but...
It is so weird. Yonge and Dundas is, and if you guys don't know Toronto, it's kind of like the Times Square of Toronto. Dead. So dead. There's no traffic at all. There's no traffic. All the roads are empty. There's people walking around, and more people than I'd like to see, but, I guess I was one of them. Everybody's wearing masks. It was weird. I went to Chick-fil-A. I got some food. And then I went home. It was literally, we went down there for a drive and just to see what it was kind of like. And it was really fucking weird and creepy.
I heard that they boarded up the Eaton Center.
Yeah, it's completely blocked off. Blocked off. It's
that's
weird.
Crazy.
There's a lot of things. Everywhere you go has social distancing lines and stickers and
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's very strange because you look outside and you just see people with masks and gloves and it's so normal, and I was one of them. I didn't wear the gloves, but I wore the mask, and it's so strange. It is so weird. I can't wait till it's over.
I agree. Hopefully all of it, like I said, will be over soon. Fingers crossed.
But anyways, let's get right into the topic. So today we're talking about signs to look out for that you might be in a toxic relationship. So I guess the way that I would listen to this episode, if you hear a lot of things in this segment that you relate to, then maybe you should consider if your relationship is toxic or not.
So yeah, so we'll go over some points, and then you can pretty much feel if it relates to you. So I think one of them would be if he takes you for granted. And by that, I mean, he doesn't appreciate you or the little things you do, and things start to shift a little bit. He's not taking you as seriously. He's not appreciative of the things you do. And it just feels kind of one-sided in a sense.
Mm-hmm. I think that this happens in a lot of relationships. And then if it ends in a breakup, that's when people do all the reflection. They're like, oh, wow, I fucked up. You know what I mean? Because they have you there and they know you're always going to be doing these things and taking care of them and whatever. So they take you for granted. But you have to really be aware of it if you know, it's not being matched, or if you just feel like they're just full out taking advantage of you and they don't see anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
But it's also your job to call them out on it if you do notice it. Like, you can change your actions and you can call them out on it, and see if there's anything that changes. And if there isn't, then that's on them.
Yeah, at least you're putting it out there too, right? Like, you're letting them know how you feel. Again, communication is like key. So if you're not talking about it and like letting them know how you feel, then things are not going to change.
Yeah, exactly.
I think another one would be like overstepping each other's boundaries. So I would say pretty much if the person is doing something that you consistently say like is one of your like pet peeves, or like something that you consistently make as a house rule. So for example, like you're the type of person who always wants shoes taken off at the front of the door. And that's like one of your house rules. It's like a boundary that you don't want someone to overcross, right? And if the person consistently does it and you keep saying it and they're like, oh, I'm sorry, but like I had to just run to the kitchen. It's like, I get that, but like it literally takes 2 seconds to take off your shoes and go to the kitchen. And it saves you the time of having to get into an argument if you can just listen and just appreciate, like respect what your wishes and what you want for people to follow. Yeah. The thing is, it's when it comes to relationships, like a lot of people have to understand that there's a lot of compromising. Like there are going to be times where you might find it difficult to like, keep each other happy because maybe something that is a big pet peeve for your partner is something that you consistently do. So it's just out of habit. But my thing is like if you consistently do it without really thinking about, like you think that, okay, this is going to affect your relationship, but you do it anyways, then that's where I feel like problems start to escalate because so why don't you just do it, right? It's like living with your parents.
Yeah.
It's like living with your parents. If they consistently tell you, like, don't come home late, and you're just doing it just because, then don't get mad that they're going to consistently lecture you or tell you something.
Exactly.
Like, you just be prepared for it.
Better, yeah. I think another example of, like, something that's less petty, I guess you could say, because in those things it's definitely like annoying and I think they deserve to be called out for it, but if it's getting more serious, I think another example of a boundary would be like someone who talks about your family in a certain way, you know what I mean?
Oh yes.
So like that's the boundary that you just don't cross. Like I can rant about my sister for 3 hours, but if you're my boyfriend, I expect you to just listen. I don't expect you to chime in and start talking shit about my sister. That's a boundary that you just don't cross. Like, if I want to say it, fine. But know better. Keep your mouth shut and know your boundaries. Because once you cross over, like, yeah, I'm mad right now, but in a day I might not be mad. And once you cross over that boundary and you talk shit about her, I'm going to know how you truly feel. And when I'm over it, I have to kind of look at you sideways and be like, okay. Because I feel like that's disrespectful. So, like, it can get more serious. It can be smaller things, like the shoes in the kitchen. There's really levels to it. But either way, if they're crossing boundaries, you should really look out for that. Another one, this is, like, one of the main ones, is if you find that your relationship is codependent, whether it's you're codependent on your partner or he's codependent on you. Okay, so with codependency, this can happen in many ways. I think a lot of people don't realize that they're codependent. So it can be as little as you depend on them for everything, for the answers, for, how you're going to go about life. Like, let's say you can't do anything without them. You need to go to appointments with them. You need to do this with them. Like, you can't go grocery shopping without them. It can be that, or it can even be you becoming emotionally reliant on this person, because once they go away, if you are emotionally reliant on them, then that codependency is going to really fuck you up, because it's like, now, God forbid you break up, who are you going to cry to? Like, what are you going to do with your emotions? It gets really hard. So, yeah, codependency is very, very toxic.
Yeah. Another point I would say is you start to lose yourself in a relationship. So you forget, again, that kind of ties in with codependency. Like, you're so caught up with things in your relationship that you forget about yourself. So you find it more important to make the other person happy than to make yourself happy. So you forget to love yourself because you're putting in more effort into your relationship. Again, I think this is another thing some of us, especially in first relationships, a lot of us tend to do little things like that. But again, you have to see where it starts to become toxic, right? Like the person consistently makes it about them and not about you or about your relationship. It's just one-sided type of thing. So you start to think that that person is your overall life. So you forget about your friends, you forget about your family, you forget, again, about yourself because you're so caught up in this relationship.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people do this. Like, these are the type of people that cut off everyone, and their friends are like, where is my friend, blah, blah, blah. And you even start neglecting your work, you start neglecting everything. And a lot of times the person doesn't even deserve it. That's the crazy thing. A lot of times they don't deserve it. But if you find that you are losing yourself and you're not doing the things you used to love, you're not talking to people you used to love, that's very, very toxic. And a lot of times that has nothing to do with your partner and has everything to do with you, because you shouldn't allow that to happen. And that's when it can get very, very toxic.
Yeah, and like speaking again on top of like you start to lose like sight of things like your job, that's another thing too, right? Like if your partner is like consistently telling you when or how or the way you should work, it's like that's something that you as an individual, you make those type of decisions. Like when it comes to your life and your work, it's not, again, obviously try to compromise where, like if you were to have a kid, like maybe one parent has to work in the morning, the other person has to work at night, but again, that's a compromise. You guys figure that out together. But another thing is saying like, no, you have to work at night because I'm gonna be working every morning and I just don't want to be with the kid at night. Like you have to feel out the conversation and how the relationship is being developed. Is it being forced on you, or is it something that you guys compromised and came to an agreement, or is it something that the person's telling you to do? Again, in a relationship, it shouldn't feel like that person is your parent. That person is your partner. So there has to be that sort of respect in where you guys are kind of agreeing on certain things in your life. Not that it's being forced upon.
And it shouldn't feel like you're losing anything. You should always be gaining something out of the relationship, whether it's like happiness, or it is intelligence, wisdom, maturity, growth, all those things. You should be constantly gaining. But if you feel like you're losing, then that's really a big problem. Another sign you might be in a toxic relationship could be if in your relationship you guys are keeping score, whether it be you or your boyfriend. So like, for example, I think we talked about this in an episode briefly, but like he's doing dumb shit and you're like keeping a mental note of how he's fucking up all the time, and you're just keeping score of all the things he's doing. It's like, okay, if you have to keep score, then like what are you really doing in this relationship? Like just have a conversation, be open, communicate.
Not just that, but like if you're keeping score at that point, like if you think about it, when you're keeping score, you're playing a game, right? So it's like he did one, I did one. And by you doing that, you're pretty much telling yourself, okay, well, he fucked up, so it's fine if I fuck up. And it's kind of like,
he cheated, so I'm going to cheat.
Exactly. So it's kind of like you're keeping that tab in case something goes bad. And again, like when something happens, that's the thing. Like when you get into like an argument or something, you got to talk about it, communicate it, and then realize whether you're going to let it go and move on, or if this is going to be something that breaks your relationship. Because a lot of people, that's where they, things like that happen where they're keeping tabs, and it's like, okay, well, he cheated once, so if I go and cheat, then he has to be able to forgive me because I forgave him. And it's like, It doesn't work that way. Like you don't want to put what that person put you, like that, pretty much if someone cheated on you, you don't want them to feel the way they made you feel.
Exactly. It's just petty. It's immature. And if that's the mentality that you have, then maybe you need to consider doing some work on yourself before like really being in a committed relationship, because that's not the kind of energy you need. Because if you're playing games like that, it's not going to end well. I can tell you that much. It's just not.
Yeah. So another point I think that is important is there always seems to be more bad than good.
So when there's more bad than good, it's really when you're looking at the timeline of your relationship and there are more bad moments than good moments. So like there's high highs and there's low lows, yes, but are you arguing 10 times more than you are laughing together? Like if you feel like 80% of your relationship is bad and it's fighting and toxic, but 20% is amazing, happiness, love, like, yeah, I'm sure that 20% is really fucking good, but also does the bad outweigh the good?
Yeah, okay, I see that. So pretty much if there's no balance with everything, because
Yeah.
in everything in life you want to have that balance, right? Like people,
Mm-hmm.
not everybody loves school, but there's an end result to it. And is my happiness for right now worth me being a millionaire when I graduate and have my diploma? So
Mm-hmm.
I think in everything there should be some type of balance, because again, everything's not butterflies and rainbows and happiness. So I
Yeah.
think in every relationship there will always be things that go wrong and conflicts and arguments, but as long as there's still that loving core between you two and there's still a balance of happiness, then I think it's okay. But it's like you said, if it's over more bad than good, then that's something you have to start to look at.
Exactly. You don't want to be caught up in a relationship with a 20% loving, aspect of it. So just make sure that you're really looking at that, because, I mean, if you're arguing, it has to be worth it. It has to be meaningful. You can't just be arguing over dumb things and letting that escalate, right? You want to be having these bad moments, but having them be worth it, because of course, like you said, it's not sunshine rainbows. Like, you're gonna fight, but make it worth it.
So another point of a toxic relationship would be if there's consistent assumption between you two. So basically what I mean is, like, if you consistently have like a routine that's like set in stone, like you work till 4:30, so you're home by 5. And let's say one day, you got caught up at work and you had to stay an extra like 15-20 minutes, which caused you to be home a little later than usual, and your partner's just like, oh well, you finish work at 4:30, you should be home by 5, and like, I don't think you were at work, like, are you sure you were at work, like, why are you finishing late? Like, if there's that consistency of having to prove yourself because the person's always assuming the wrong of you, then that's when you know it's a toxic relationship.
Yeah. And I totally get that, because I remember when I was in a relationship, I had to fight that, because I would get so emotional. Let's say I would call my partner at the time at, I don't know, 11 o'clock at night. And if I was ignored, I would get so like upset, and like I would just like really take it personally. I wouldn't really react, like I wouldn't do anything about it, but inside my mind I had to really fight the assumption of like, they're ignoring me, they don't want to talk to me, blah blah blah, they're probably just doing this and that. But like, I never thought they were out cheating, but like I would just overthink, like, why doesn't he want to talk to me right now? Like, he's probably on his computer seeing my call. But then like eventually he'd call me at like 12 and be like, oh, like, I fell asleep, blah blah blah, and I could hear that he was asleep. Like, I could hear it in his voice, and I'd be like, wow, that none of that stress was worth it, because you stress yourself out when you make assumptions, and it's just not worth it because you're probably wrong. And this is random, but if anybody reads, you should read the book The Four Agreements, because it talks all about making assumptions and how it's something that is very, very toxic and not worth it. So you never want to make assumptions.
It's a common thing, like, it's a human trait. It's kind of like being jealous, like, it's
Yeah.
just human nature to just assume things. But my thing is to, like, there comes a time where you start to feel like it's getting to a level where you just start to feel overpowered, and like the relationship becomes toxic. So again, like, these points are not saying that it can't happen. It's just you have to know when you're overpowering these traits for it to become a toxic thing in your relationship.
Yeah, exactly. Because everything in moderation, like, we're all human, but you're gonna make assumptions. But one of the things you need to think about is, how are you going to act? Like, what are you going to do about these assumptions? Are you going to think through it and process it internally so that you can react in a normal way? Or are you going to let the assumption get the best of you and start an argument over something that probably isn't the case, So if you're making assumptions a lot, or he's making assumptions a lot, figure out the root of it. Like, is it rooted in a lack of trust? Is it rooted in insecurity? Like, figure that out, assess it. But if it's too much, then it's probably getting toxic.
Yeah, another point I would say is if the conversation gets shut down quickly. So basically, this is saying that you guys get into arguments or discussions, and the person's the type to just either agree with you just to end the conversation, or completely turns it around and says, listen, like, you have one way of believing things. You have one way of telling your side of the story, and it just gets completely shut down because the person's trying to explain their self and why your reasoning isn't right.
Or like even when they just don't want to talk about it, they're just like, I don't have time for this conversation. This is not worth it. This isn't.
Yeah. Again,
or
if,
are like that.
Again, and like one big thing is just like a person's trying to like explain themselves and tell you, and you're just kind of like, okay, yeah, okay, like whatever you say.
It's so frustrating.
Because then at the end of the day, it's like you're trying to explain yourself and tell yourself why you feel some way or why the situation is the way it is, but the person doesn't even bother to listen or to want to seem like they want to fix it. So it starts to become toxic because, again, then you start to feel like the relationship is one-sided. Like here you are trying to explain yourself and, fix things, but that effort's not being made on the other end.
I even had a friend like that, and that in itself was draining. So I can't even imagine having a boyfriend like that, because I remember I would try and just like have a conversation with her about her behavior, like how it wasn't really like fair. And she would be like, okay. And like, just like very like shut me down and start cutting me off and just be like, all right, fine. Yeah, I'll stop. And I'm like, okay, but that's like not like, do you understand why? Do you understand the problem? Or are you just going to say that to shut me up? And then you're going to keep doing, you know what I mean? Like, figure out the difference of like when they're truly listening and communicating versus when they are just trying to shut you up and say, okay, I'm sorry. Because people get petty. They get so petty. And those are the people that you cannot be in serious relationships with, that don't even want to hear you out or communicate. Why don't you want to solve this? Why don't you want to work through it? Why do you want to just shut me up and get over it for 24 hours?
And again, if you're the type of person who can't resolve something when you're in the heat, which is normal, because like I know I'm that type of person. Like if I'm angry, I'm gonna say things that I don't mean, and I'm gonna like lash out and maybe say some hurtful things. So if that's who you are, then just say, listen, let's not talk about it now because I'm just really heated up. Give me a minute, let me reflect on what's happening, and let's sit down and talk about it, because it's a consistent issue, and just like you, I don't want this to be a habit of us consistently going back and forth. So if that's the case, like, and that's another thing, right? Like, you're your own person, so you know your traits and who you are. So if that's something that you struggle with, then let your partner know, like, when I'm in the heat of the moment, don't talk to me about the situation, let me be, and then when I'm ready, I'll come and talk to you. Because that's another thing, right? There's people who are not very public. Like if you're at a party and something happened, I might not come and confront you about the situation because I don't want to cause a scene. So again, knowing your partner and letting them know that you do want to talk about it, but now isn't the time, is something that should always be discussed.
Exactly. Another one that relates to this, I feel like, okay, so the next one is victim mentality, right? I think that a lot of people that shut down the conversations like we were just talking about, and that don't want to communicate, and that have issues with these serious conversations, is because of the victim mentality that they have rooted in them. So if you find that you or your boyfriend are constantly playing the victim, and you're getting into an argument and it's like, woe is me, everything's my fault, blah, 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 and like you're all of a sudden you're upset and you kind of switch the script on them, and now like they're apologizing. Do you know what I mean? So you're really just playing the victim instead of having a mature conversation. That's not okay at all. I used to do this. I used to kind of victimize myself, I think, because I felt sorry for myself in situations, and it never, ever ended well.
But yeah, I think being the victim here and there is okay when you are the victim. But again, one thing is like being the victim all the time, and you never see how it can also be your fault, or like where you played a part of this, right? Like being able to see your own flaws and being able to, accept the fact that things are not perfect on your end either is a big step too. Because again, when we're talking about relationships, it could be that you're the toxic person, right? So be aware of these things and these traits. I think that's like a big one, is just the type of person who always wants to be right. That's a person who pretty much is always playing the victim because they can't see the both sides, like the two sides of the story. So I think, that's definitely like a toxic trait.
Arguing with people like that is exhausting because you're just trying to have a conversation, and it's like you can't because they're so focused on who's right, who's wrong, who's this. It's like, okay, cool, but like, let's get to the issue. Let's resolve this. But people who play the victim, you're talking in circles for hours, and it's draining.
Yeah, I think another big point would be the lack of trust. So this is pretty straightforward. Like, no relationship can be built without trust. So if you feel like there's a lack of trust, like you had so much trust for this person and like now it's slowly diminishing, that is also concerning, because it pretty much means that there was something in the relationship that caused you to feel that way. Yeah. So again, when things happen, you have to talk about it. And if it's something that you can move on and let go, then your relationship could still be healthy. But if it's something that you're holding on to, kind of like keeping scores, then things will just start to escalate and eventually become toxic between you two.
Also, like, you have to understand, if you have a lack of trust, you need to figure out why. Who's the problem? Are you the problem, or are they the problem? Do you not trust them because of external reasons? For example, like, you grew up in a broken home, or you've had friends who've had their mans cheat on them, like reasons that have nothing to do with your partner. Or do you not trust them because they've done something, or they're shady, or they're this, or they're that? If they're shady, then you talk about it with them and you figure out what the fuck is going on. But if you can't trust them, you can't trust them. I don't think it's worth it to be in a relationship with someone you can't trust. I think that sounds like a lot of work that you don't need to do. If it is the other option, where it's like external factors are the reasons why you don't trust, then you need to work on yourself, because that could be insecurity, that could be jealousy, things that have nothing to do with them, but they're getting this is the way that I look at it. It's like, you can't treat someone like, you can't treat someone a certain way if they don't deserve it. It's like strict parents that put their kids in a box and treat them like they're doing bad things all the time. What do you think your kid's going to do? They're going to do bad things. You're already treating them like they're being bad anyways. They may as well be bad. So if you're treating your boyfriend like he's cheating, and you're calling him all kinds of names, and you don't trust him, then he's probably going to be like, yo, I'm getting treated like I'm cheating on my girl anyways. I may as well just go fucking cheat. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to do it eventually.
The thing too is, I see that especially like in the younger generations, like if you go through certain things in your life, like you dated someone who cheated on you, and then you go into another relationship and you are taking out that anger and the way you feel about that ex towards your new relationship. It's like, just because your ex cheated on you doesn't mean this guy's gonna cheat on you. And you have to start to understand that, because again, it's like we were saying, like, you could be the person who's creating that toxic in the relationship. Like, just because you've had it happen to you doesn't mean every person is out there trying to do the same thing.
And that's why we say, don't do rebounds. Like, don't do all that. Heal yourself before getting into new relationships, because when you carry that baggage into your new relationship, you're bound to fuck it up, because you're still holding on to all the things that you need to forgive and let go of. So you can't be doing that. It's not fair.
I think another thing too would be when your partner puts you down all the time.
Oh my God.
So, is always saying negative things, or even like the slightest things, like your accomplishments. Like, let's say you recently, you recently got your driver's license. It's like something you want to share. Like, you want to share all your accomplishments with your partner. And like, you notice that every time you're saying something, it's like, okay, yeah, cool. Like, congrats. Like, I got my G2 long time ago. I don't know why you're just getting it now.
God.
It's like, relax yourself.
Or if you're like, oh my God, my hair's growing. And they're like, really? Didn't you like cut it 17 months ago? Of course it's growing. Like, little shady shit like that. Ugh. Your boyfriend should be making you feel like the most beautiful person in the world. And they should make you feel so special and appreciated, and you should celebrate accomplishments together.
Yeah, I pretty much think that it's horrible when your partner puts you down, because in any relationship, you want to shine together, you want to go through your struggles together, and if you can't go through the happiness, it's kind of like when you graduate. Like, you want that person to be there, you want that person to be happy for you, and if they can't do that, then it's just like, why are you in that relationship? With every accomplishment, it kind of feels like your accomplishment. So it's like, if your partner, gets their G, it's like, great, I feel like I got my G. I'm so happy for you. Like, let's celebrate. Even the smallest things, I think it's something you should always celebrate, because it shows that you're happy and that person makes you proud, and like, you're happy to be in that relationship with that person.
I remember when I hit a milestone on YouTube, and my partner at the time threw me a whole ass surprise party with my friends and got me flowers and bought me dinner. Like, it was a happy day for both of us, not just for me. It was literally like as if we both hit the 100K. You know what I mean? Like, that's the type of energy that I feel people should be getting. You shouldn't be like, oh my God, like I hit 100K, and it's like, oh, sick, like that's dope, you know, you've been working. Like, it should be a very exciting moment. I'm not saying everybody needs to throw a surprise party and go all out, but like, you want the energy.
I agree. Like I said, any small accomplishment should feel like a great accomplishment from your partner. Because on top of that, you want to hype them up. You want to like let them know that you're there for them, and that, you know, you think that these little milestones, even if it's little, like I said, these milestones, whether it's small or big accomplishments, it's like you want to show that you're proud of them and that you support them and that you're there for them. So
exactly,
I think that's important.
Okay, so going through all of these traits, again, guys, if you hear a lot of these and you're just like, oh, that's me, that's my boyfriend, that's us, then there's a problem. There's a problem. So now we kind of want to talk about, like, okay, like, are any of these issues able to be worked through, or are these kind of like you're stuck at a dead end? It's either break up or, you know, deal with the issues. What do you think? Do you think that you can work through these?
I think you could. The thing is, too, like, again, like, when it comes to relationship, people have to understand that it's two people, right? You could want to fix something, but if the person is not putting that effort in, then
it takes two to
tango. Right? I mean, that's the thing. Like, if the effort wants to be made by both parties, then yes, it can be fixed. It's something that, it's kind of like therapy, right? Like, you can go to therapy and, like, work through things, and things can, you know, become better for you too. But again, like, the effort has to be made on both sides. If it's just one-ended, then it's like you're holding on to that relationship. That person clearly doesn't want to be with you. You need to start to accept that and see what the next step is.
Exactly. Like, I feel like if you have the victim mentality trait, for example, that's something that you can't just be like, we need to get through this, blah, blah, blah. Like, you play the victim and, you know, let's work through this. And they're just kind of like, no, I don't. Like, that's not going to go anywhere, because clearly they're stuck in that victim mentality. If they can't cooperate with you, then no, it can't really be worked through. But if you're both open and communicative and, you know, fair about it, then yeah, you can definitely work through some of these. I think that all of these are workable, but some of them require isolation, like time apart or something. Like, for example, something like codependency, you might need to take a little break so that you can kind of find yourself again. But it all depends on how patient your partner is, right?
So when would you say it's time to call it quits?
I think once you've had a few conversations about any of these topics, one or more of them, I think that it's like, if you're repeating yourself and you're just trying to get them out of this mentality or trait and they just don't give a fuck and it's affecting you and the relationship, I think it's time to kind of call it quits, or really give them an ultimatum, like, listen, like, I'm going to break up with you if you don't work on this. And if they don't work on it, clearly they don't care enough to, then it's time to call it quits. Especially because it's just affecting you guys as a whole and it's not going to stop. So if you see no effort and no change, I think that would be time.
Yeah, I agree. Again, like I said in the beginning, it's like the effort has to be made on both ends. And if you're consistently having to tell your partner to, you know, change their behavior or change certain things, and they keep saying yes, 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 I'll do it, but you don't see no action, it's like you're just putting yourself in this hole again, right? Yeah. It's like taking back a cheater and they're telling you that they're not going to cheat again, and you consistently, you know, see that same behavior. It's like you're putting yourself in that situation as well by continuously giving them a second, third, fourth chance. So that's when you really have to reflect and think, like, is anything really changing? Is there efforts being made? Is there any type of change? And that's when you have to know whether or not it's time to walk away.
Exactly. And when do you think that these become concerns? Because I know some of these are, like, not huge, but when do you think is the time that you look at it and you're like, okay, this is a problem?
Basically what I said before, it's just like you see a pattern. You consistently see a pattern in the person, and again, like, you talk about it, but you feel like you're talking about the same thing over and over again, and you start to sound like a broken record. I feel like that's when you start to, you know, feel a little concerned, because you're trying to think of whether or not the person is actually taking you seriously, if they're actually, like, you know, being mindful of the things that they're doing and how it's hurting your relationship. Yeah. But I feel like once you get to that point where you just feel like you're in the same funk and nothing is changing, that's when you should start to feel a little concerned, because you think that, you know, you're just wasting your time.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. When, again, like you said, when you see a pattern, you really have to just start keeping an eye out. And when you're having the same problem over and over and over again, then it's definitely a concern.
Talking about all these traits and like toxic relationships, do you think that having this type of relationship with your partner affects you as an individual?
100%. 100%. Like, all of these things you carry with you through life, whether you're aware of it or not. So, like, for example, if someone's constantly overstepping your boundaries, if you get into another relationship, you're going to be affected by that you're going to carry that in. You losing yourself in the relationship will fuck you up. All of these things, like even conversations getting shut down, that's something that will make you feel small as a person, and maybe you won't be so eager to speak up when things are not going well at work or in other relationships in your life. Like, these are all things that will kind of mess you up mentally and will affect how you treat situations in your everyday life, such as work, school, partnerships, friendships, family members. So yeah, it'll affect you for sure. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I take this back to like when people, talk about bullying, right? Like, people are bullies because of their, what they're taking from their household, right? So I kind of see it in the same way, in a sense where if you're feeling neglected or you're feeling some type of way in your relationship at home, it's gonna affect you at work or when you're out with your friends or like daily errands, because you're overthinking things, or you're thinking, I'm going to Walmart to grab something, and then you're thinking, when I get home, I'm going to have to deal with these issues, or I'm going to have to hear it from my significant other. And it's like, it starts to affect you as a person because of overthinking it in general.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's it, guys. Again, like, I'm not saying that if you apply to one of these, then your relationship is toxic. That's not what we're trying to say. We're trying to say, like, keep an eye out for little signs that, maybe you're not in the healthiest relationship, and that doesn't mean there's no going back. Like, you can sit down and have a conversation, but just be aware of the relationship you're in and if it's good for you and for your mental health. And I hope that this episode helped you guys with that.
Yeah, so hopefully some of these tips and like little things that we talked about was helpful for you, or if you know someone who is in this situation, get them on it, let them listen to it, because again, it's like I said in one of our other episodes, sometimes it's easier to hear it from a stranger than to hear it from someone you care about.
Like, they're not going to listen to you, but they're going to listen to Brenda and Ashley. So if you know someone in a toxic relationship, send them the episode. I'm not even joking. Literally, just don't even say anything. Don't even give them any context. Just send them the episode, get them to listen to it, and then trust me, they're going to have something to take away from it.
Yes, and don't forget to always, as we mentioned, don't forget to leave a comment on our Apple podcast and to leave a 5-star review.
No one leaves us the fucking reviews and ratings. No one. Guys, if you're listening, leave us a 5-star review and rating, please. Please, it helps us out a lot. Just give us a little comment like, wow, episode 5 was great, blah, 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 blah. Like, just say something nice, No one's doing it. It's so sad.
I know. We like to hear from you guys. Why are you neglecting us? But anywho, that was all for today. Again, I hope you guys found this episode helpful and that you enjoyed listening to it. If you guys have any, requests, send it to us through our DMs. Yeah, so don't forget to send us, what you want to listen to. Hit us up on Instagram. Our Instagram account is Let's Get Real the Podcast. Our Twitter account is Let's Get Real Pod.
We'll start posting tweets at 100 followers. Our YouTube channel is Let's Get Real Podcast. Subscribe. We post every episode weekly. And I guess that's it. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next Monday.
Bye.
Bye.